Utah has one of the easiest schedules in college football, according to a major college football outlet. Let's discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We're available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at X. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Sammy Mora of UteZone.com. And Sammy, we're actually going to be talking about something that comes from 24/7 Sports, so very timely to have you on, as well as 24/7 Sports released their list of the easiest schedules in college football. This is via Bad Crawford, and there's actually a lot of Big 12 teams on here. There's Cincinnati, there's Kansas, there's Utah, and there's Arizona. So a lot of teams in the top 10 from the Big 12. I don't think that's shocking, because when you do look at a lot of these way too early top 25 lists, you don't see a ton of Big 12 programs. That's because a lot of them have been kind of roller coasters, with a lot of those trending more towards the drops and the highs in the last couple seasons in particular. So I don't think I'm surprised. And even when we look at Utah's schedule, we don't know the exact order of it yet. We'll be talking about that in the second schedule. But I mean, I expect Arizona and Oklahoma State to be ranked when Utah played them. But I mean, like, there's a reason there's no Big 10 teams on here. There's no SEC teams on here, because those are like, oh, pencil in that they have to play Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Like, they have to play top 10, top 5 teams. There is a world where Utah could go this season and not in the regular season and not play another top 10 team. I think that Arizona or Oklahoma State, one of those will be good enough to be in the top 15. But I don't know if there is a top 10 team on their schedule. So I think their inclusion at 5 is fair on this list.
Yeah, and I think as a whole, the Big 12 tends to be lacking those perennial blue bloods. I think that's something that a lot of fans have mentioned with the move happening, because like in the Pac-12, you had the Oregons, the Washingtons, the USCs, the UCLAs. Those are perennial programs that are so good at what they do. Whereas the Big 12's losing their 2 perennial programs in Texas and OU, who are going to the SEC. So I think that it doesn't shock me that this is deemed like one of the easiest schedules in the country. But one program that you're not mentioning that I possibly think could be ranked by the time Utah plays them is Iowa State. I think Iowa State has the potential. I think they have the potential to be a sleeper team in the Big 12 this year. I'm not saying they're gonna like shock everybody and win every single game in the conference, but I do think that Iowa State has a lot of pieces that I think will compete and make that team a very competitive team and a fun team. And Coach Campbell makes his teams are always well coached, they're well disciplined, they're very good teams. And I think that the level of competition in the Big 12 is just going to be upped with the addition of the 4 corner schools. I think that as time goes on, those 4 programs are just going to make everybody else around them better, everybody else around them stronger. And I think that that's something that in 2 to 3 years, maybe we're not talking about the Big 12 as being one of the easiest schedules. Maybe we're talking about them being one of the more difficult schedules. So I think that also just kind of bodes to the way that college football is a lot of these programs, it used to be you're on a 4-year cycle. Like you'd be good for 2 or 3 years, like based on recruiting classes. But now it's a year-to-year basis with the portal, with the draft declarations. There's a lot of moving pieces now in college football. So I'm not like shocked that Utah's said one of the easiest schedules in the country, especially if you factor in that non-conference schedule. Like that's not helping the case. At least like the last 2 years, Utah's had some very good non-conference games with Florida and Baylor, which Baylor is still considered a non-con, but like I think most people are like, it's not really a non-con because they're both going to be wearing Big 12 patches on their shirts. So, but then that non-conference schedule just doesn't help things because usually your non-conference schedule is used to boost your your in-conference schedule. But with only one P5 team in Baylor, I don't really see it being a great thing, especially when they say like for scheduling out of conference games, you should have an A team, a B team, and a C team. So like your A team is like Utah's A team this year would probably be Baylor. Their B team would probably be Utah State, and their C team would probably
Has to be.
and then their C team would probably be
Southern Utah.
SUU. Yeah, so it's like whereas other programs, their non-con games are like BYU's playing SMU. Like there's a lot of bigger non-con games that are boasting those schedules, but it doesn't surprise me. But even if the schedule, like Utah was rated one of the hardest schedules in the country for the 2023 season.
Yes.
So
Mora.
So it's like, and that was before all of the injuries. That was before everything that happened in the season. So
that's because it's related to how good the other teams are.
And
too.
yeah, and see, that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like to a certain extent, you kind of play into that, but then also like nobody in the nation saw Washington going undefeated.
No.
Nobody saw Arizona. Like some people did see Arizona's like surgence because it was trending that way before last season, but you know, there's always going to be some wrenches that are thrown into a college football season. So while I'm not shocked, I'm not counting on it because it's college football. You play the games for a reason. Because if it was based on easiest schedules, a lot of these teams would have been written off and deemed as like not good because they're playing to lower opponents.
No, absolutely. And there's so much to still be determined about these teams, right? Like some of these teams that are easy games. I think I like that you brought up Iowa State. There's always like, and we could say the same thing. Like, what if TCU bounces back after they're down here? Like, does that seem? I would be surprised, of course, if TCU bounces back to that level where they're beating Utah. But I was also very surprised when they made the national championship game a couple years ago. So I'm not exactly going to count the Horned Frogs out completely. Deion Sanders in Colorado. Look, they got the best quarterback in the conference for my money still. When you talk about Shedeur Standards, who should be, I think, one of the top 3 picks in the 2025 NFL draft. So I'm never going to count them completely out, even if I got to see this offensive line in action to believe it, as well as a lot of the additions they still need to make defensively too. But it is, once again, just so interesting that so many Big 12 teams are on this list because it does show the state of the conference now. I like that you highlighted Baylor, especially because Baylor comes to Utah. So even like last year, it was like, oh, you have to go to Baylor. And now, the Baylor program's trending down. Like no one was really excited to bring Dave Aranda back, but because he won them the conference championship a couple years ago, they felt like they had to. So even that one's lost its luster a little bit. There's a lot of these ones like that. Yeah.
And the other thing about like the Big 12 schedules for me is especially like not to like be like sound like arrogant and cocky and stuff like that, but Utah honestly probably is the big dog.
I've titled numerous episodes of this exact show Locked On Utes with that exactly. There's a reason that all these other outlets are ranking Utah at the top, to your point.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like Utah can't play themselves. If Utah could play themselves, that would probably boost their schedule because that's a better team. So Utah's boosting the schedules of everyone around them.
Exactly.
But not their own. But like, so you said that Arizona's on that list. So Arizona and Utah play. So that should be kind of awkward.
That's still like one tough game.
Yeah.
But Utah doesn't play Cincinnati and Kansas, who are 1 and 2 on this list.
Yeah. So that's like, like if Utah was playing like Kansas, I feel like their schedule would go up a little bit, especially because same with K-State. That's another team that I think could be like a sleeper kind of team. I hate using the word sleeper because like that just gives discredit to programs. But like I think
I will say they did just like they lost Will Howard. Like that matters.
Yeah, true. But like I still think Kansas State has potential. But like I'm like interested to see how Big 12 play shapes out, but at the same time, like I don't think we're gonna have the same level of like thrillers, and I don't think we're also gonna have the same level of like it was always a joke about the Pac-12 how the Pac-12 would devour itself. I don't see the Big 12 doing that. I don't see the Big 12 being a conference that devours each other. Like I don't think that happens. Maybe the Four Corner schools bring that like mojo from the Pac-12 and devour themselves, the four of them. But like from top to bottom, I don't see that being a thing in the Big 12, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
But,
we'll
like,
see. I mean,
yeah, again, it's like it remains to be seen because, like, some teams always are gonna surprise you. Like,
UCF beating Oklahoma State last year. Like, there's these weird random things like
yeah.
that where it'll be interesting to see the level of consistency these teams can keep up like that, and bringing in Pac-12 teams that are used to cannibalizing each other. Maybe, like you said, maybe that will throw the whole thing into even more of a flux. So something that's interesting to monitor. And you know what else is very interesting to monitor is we still don't know the dates of Utah's schedule, but we may have a reported release date of when we will know exactly when Utah will play each of their opponents on their schedules. Want to talk about that a little bit more in one moment. But first, want to talk to all of you about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes in our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Fit guaranteed, only available to U.S. customers. Also want to talk to you about another sponsor of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at UCCU. Learn and earn, the UCCU mobile banking app that pays your entire family to learn about money. Kids look to parents to become more financially literate. Parents, they don't always know the answers. Learn and earn breaks down financial topics into fun, bite-sized educational games, like quizzes and trivia. Every time a family member completes a topic, they earn points that can occur and can be redeemed for gift cards, stores like Amazon, Apple, Sephora, Walmart, Nike, and more. There is age-appropriate content for every member of the family who can compete against each other and track their progress on leaderboards. Learn and earn is inside the UCCU mobile banking app, so play it anytime, anywhere. The more you play, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you earn. Learn and earn, part of UCCU's award-winning Be Money Smart Youth Banking Program, helping kids, teens, and parents have fun while becoming more financially literate together. UCCU, love where you bank. Sammy, we've all been waiting on the dates of Utah's schedule a while ago. I want to say December, maybe it was even November. I'm trying to remember now. We knew who Utah would be playing all the way through 2030. Am I correct, Sammy?
I think
Like
so.
the general opponents?
I
Utah
think
put
so.
something
It
out.
was like one of those like weird like grid things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
but
was
it stretches out for a few years either way.
well,
That's
and the thing
that's
is I was like looking at it and I was like, I'm not gonna remember who Utah
yeah.
like I'm not gonna remember this for like 2078 who Utah's
Yeah.
supposed to be playing. Like just
Mhm.
give it to me in bite-sized like pieces. Like I
Mhm.
don't need this this big like thing. But yes.
Yeah, there's like you said, it's just a lot. There's a lot going on when you have that big of a scheduled thing like that. But the Big 12 is expected to release their 2024 schedule on January 30th. Sources tell The Athletic. That is reported by Max Olson, coming to us from X there. And the conference revealed the matches to its first 16 teams in November. But with Utah now joining the fray as well, that's where we're still waiting to get all the dates and the extra stuff from their schedule to be exact. And look, I'm excited. I think when you're looking at the schedule overall, I'm very curious, like, when is the BYU game going to land? Is it going to be on rivalry weekend, or are they going to put it at another week in the season to maybe be like, oh, we want this to be, it's not going to, right away, it won't have the national hype, nor probably will it ever, of the Texas-Oklahoma, because that's a historic thing, but it's an example of a rivalry that is moved outside of rivalry weekend, and whenever it is played, it is the epicenter of the college football world. Pretty much regardless of where the two teams are ranked, everyone wants to know and watch, and we'll see what happens in the Red River Showdown. I think there's a chance if you move Utah versus BYU to another weekend, you can generate some type of similar hype. Once again, not to that exact level. So very curious to see what that is. When does Utah play Colorado? Deion Sanders, we know he's always going to bring a show with him. And of course, the Arizona game too, because at the time we are recording this show, a lot of their best players are still there. Like, yes, their lead back left, but still got everyone else there. A lot of the key players there, so they're still going to be really good. So those are the three key games I want to see the dates of on the schedule. But what are you most looking forward to about actually seeing the dates on the schedule?
Well, I'm excited because I can get some travel planned, first and foremost. But I'm gonna disagree with your point about the Utah BYU game. I honestly think it
Okay.
will still be on rivalry weekend.
Mhm.
because Brett Yormark has talked numerous times about how much he is excited to have this rivalry in his conference, to reestablish it, all these things. And there's just like, I growing up as like going to Utah games as a young child, all of these things, like I remember Thanksgiving weekend, Utah BYU, like it was ingrained in my brain that like that was the weekend we played BYU, no matter if it was on the road or at home. And so I think that reestablishing that as like an end of conference game, like I know a lot of Utah fans aren't going to like it being rivalry weekend, but like you got to admit like that's probably the best time to play that game. And especially just because like the last couple of years when that game was played, it doesn't feel the same having it like the third week of September. Like
I
it just
agree with that.
it doesn't feel right. And maybe it's because I've been around Utah since I was like since I was like a baby. Like if it's not Thanksgiving weekend, it's nowhere for me. And that's kind of my like stance on the matter is I'm so used to it being that weekend. I am excited to see the November schedule for Utah outside of if BYU is that November, that Thanksgiving weekend. Just because I want to see like some of these programs, like I know it gets cold and I know it gets like some of those places. I would like to see them deal with it. Just like pure Utah cold, but I am excited for TCU to be back. I've been a big fan of the Utah TCU rivalry again since I was little. I remember going to that 2010 game and that just like crushed my heart. But I think that the TCU game is going to be a fun one. That one seems like a game that they could put outside of like a rivalry weekend, but still branded as a rivalry because Utah and TCU have such a long past.
Good point.
But you know, like now that I actually look at the schedule, like the like scheduled teams that are supposed to be in race cycles, like the only one that might be a little bit like not used to the cold as of late is TCU. Iowa State should be used to it. BYU obviously is used to it, and Arizona's obviously used to it. Baylor, I don't think it's going to be snowing in September, so like whatever. So I take back my statement about the snow. If UCF was coming here, then yeah, I'm like, you want them in November because that would be.
I'm down to go to them in November though.
Hey, that's the trip I'm trying to plan. I'm trying to go to Florida. So I'm trying to go to Florida for some time, but yeah, I'm like, that's the thing is like the only games I have like a strong inkling to where I would like them is the BYU game and that TCU game. The rest of the games I don't really care where they fall. I am interested to see if Kyle Whittingham's patented earlier like mid-season bye week is still something that happens. Because we know that he loves to do that mid-season bye. It's like smack dab in the middle of the season. And it usually comes at a very good time for Utah. Like it did this year. So, but like bye week, TCU, BYU, that's probably it. Like Utah's very much like I don't think Utah cares when they're playing, who they're playing, as long as they get to play them. So.
No, very true. Two things. Number one, I like the points you made about the rivalry with the BYU game. There is something special about it being in November. I absolutely agree with that. And I'll also say this. We know, let's look at rivalry weekend. What are the marquee matchups on rivalry weekend? Of course, the game, Ohio State and Michigan, as it's marketed. Then the Iron Bowl, which ESPN now owning the SEC, they will even drive the hype around that even more, although Auburn still has to hold up their end of the bargain in some way. But those are the marquee rivalries. So,
well, and there's some that get moved to Friday, like the Egg Bowl with Mississippi State's always played on Friday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday or Friday. This year it was played on a Friday.
Did they move it to a Friday? I thought they always played on Thanksgiving.
I swear they played it on a Friday this year.
Maybe
or am I tripping?
I think it was Thanksgiving, but I also
they either played on Thanksgiving or like on Friday. There was one year they played it on a Friday.
No, but I do. To your point, I think Oregon and Oregon State this past year played on a Friday.
They did. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I
So
knew there was one game that was
that's a
played on a Friday.
exactly. That's a major game. Like there were at least like for Fox, like they hyped that up. Like there was a lot of interest, a battle of these top. I think both top. I know Oregon obviously was top 10, and then Oregon State. I think they were still top
I think
20.
they want to see if I think they were 15. I think they were in the top 15 at
Yeah, I
that
think there
point.
was like they just lost to Washington, so I think they stumbled a little bit in the rankings,
Yeah.
but not too far because it wasn't a bad loss. But either way, yeah. So there's all these interesting scheduling things. Like I would love if I like I said, I know you want it on the Saturday like that, but it could be on the Friday night. It'd be pretty close to it and still get
Yeah.
that marquee rivalry, and even Saturday night itself. Sadly, no more Pac-12 after dark, but these are late night matchups that there is a window of opportunity to have these slide in there. Like, sure, USC, UCLA may be in there. Oregon, Washington might play in there as well. But I think there's
Battle
a
of
chance
Los
for
Angeles
some
is
late
not played on rivalry weekend usually.
Usually, but that's another thing that could change, just like the Utah
True.
BYU one, right?
Because usually
That's a good point. It hasn't been in the past.
USC usually plays Notre Dame that last week of the season. They didn't play on rivalry weekend at all this season. USC scheduled their bye purposefully the last week of the season so that they could prepare for the Pac-12 championships that they never made it to. But like there's some interesting kinks, and I honestly think like you obviously my thing is like that the Iron Bowl, in my mind at least, the Iron Bowl is going to be primetime ESPN.
Yep, 7:30 slot.
Yeah, it's gonna be prime time. Who has the rights on? Who has CBS? Like, who is CBS's rights now? Is it Big
CBS
10?
is weird. Like, I think they're Big 10 and something else, but like they don't. I still think Fox gets the game. It's a weird. I don't know what happened with CBS and
Yeah, I'm like, is CBS like done? Because like
not completely, but basically.
Yeah, well, and then like obviously Big 12, like maybe I don't know if any of their rights are going to Fox or if they're strictly ESPN.
I'm trying to remember. I think Fox got some, but it's not a major.
I'm like, put that game on Fox. Put that on like Fox in the late slot. Put the Utah BYU game on the late slot on Fox. There you go. There you go.
I agree.
And rebranded as like, oh, this is the Holy War's back. Ooh, like rebranded as something like that because like people who know how not violent, but like how aggressive this
how passionate the fan bases are when it comes to this game.
I think that like
that has good potential.
Yeah, the viewership will be there. The viewership would be there. Just like I get that Utah's rebrand, like bringing back like, oh, with Utah State, the Battle of the Brothers is back. I'm like, but again, like Utah lost to Utah State like a couple years the last time they played, but like still like again, it's a historic rivalry, and so for Utah to say like, hey, the Battle of the Brothers is back, people were kind of excited about that. So like, I mean, just branded as the Holy War's back and just smack it like prime time on Fox. Even Fox Sports 1. There's like options like ESPN.
I want it on Fox. Don't give me FS1 for our big rivalry game. I know what you mean. It's better than nothing.
Okay, I know. Okay, Utah fans have to be like, Utah fans have been through it with dealing with the Pac-12 networks for God knows how many years, like 12, 13, 14 at this point. Like they like just put them on TV. Just put them on
That's
TV.
True.
They don't care what channel, they will find it. They will find it and they will watch it. So
that is a good point. Last one I wanted to make before we talk some Utah Gymnastics. I think the one other thing I'm very interested to see with the schedule is I felt like it was a very tough stretch for Utah to have to do USC, Oregon, a little bit of break with Arizona State, but then Washington. Those were some of their toughest games of the season, scrunched into a 4-week stretch. So I'd be curious to this if Utah did some comment. I just want to see mainly to me Oklahoma State and Arizona. If those games were back to back, that's not what I would love. I'd like those to be a little spaced out just in case there are little nagging injuries that occur. And that is one minor thing I'm looking for with the schedule. But I agree with you, Sammy. I'm excited to see what it looks like. Yeah.
This also links back to our previous conversation about easy schedules. Like, there's not a death stretch for Utah in this schedule. There shouldn't be. Like, there's no like predetermined death stretch like there was this year, where it was those 4 games like back to back. So I don't like. Do I think it's going to kill Utah if Arizona and Oklahoma State are back to back? No, because also at the same time, they made it through that gauntlet last year with like half a team. So I don't think that those like hard stretches, like yeah, they're always going to be hard like mentally, physically, but I don't think it's going to be like a stretch where Utah just like can't get up for games. They can't do it. Like
Agreed.
they're tired. Like those kind of things. I don't
Yeah.
think that's not how Kyle Whittingham raises his program.
Yeah.
That's not how he gets these guys going. And I think that with the expectations that this team has, I don't think that they're gonna just be like, "Oh, guys, we have 2 hard games." Like, woo! Like they're gonna try and show the Big 12 what Utah football is, how they've been in the Pac-12. They're gonna give the Big 12 a taste of the Utah way very quickly, like very quickly. So
I absolutely agree. I'm excited to see it as well. And speaking of the Utah way has been incredible to watch as it relates to Utah Gymnastics over the past few seasons as well. And Utah had to already go through a little bit of a gauntlet when they had to take on in a single meet LSU, UCLA, and Oklahoma, and that one didn't go exactly the way. Then, of course, got right with the best of Utah. Coming up this Friday, they take on Arizona State. But what are your thoughts on this Utah Gymnastics team, Sammy?
there's a lot of good to take from this team. Obviously, the offseason they had was just like another gauntlet they had to take on. But from top to bottom, I think that this team is very well prepared. I think now there's some questions that have arisen with Emily Morgan, Utah's standard like junior standout junior who said today announced actually she announced it last night, which was Monday night, that she was going to be going to the English championships to try and vie for a spot on the UK's Olympic team again, which she was a part of in 2020 before she came to Utah. But I was kind of confused if she's going to be there on Friday, kind of confused if she wasn't going to be there on Friday. Like the release we got, info that I got from practice just was not adding up. I don't know if she's going to be there Friday, but she might be, she might not be. She is the Pac-12 rating specialist of the week though. So there's also that. But like she'll be gone for the entire month of February and half of March, and she'll be back right before Pac-12 championships. So there's going to be some freshmen that are probably called upon. I wouldn't be surprised to see Elizabeth Gantner and Cammie Winger taking more of a role. Thankfully, Emily only has 2 events that she competes for Utah right now. It is beam and bars, which have proven to be 2 of Utah's strongest events so far this season. But they're good. I think this freshman class is extremely good. They're very well versed already, and they're ready to compete. Ella Zerbes is insane on bars. She nearly had a 995 plus routine at the Sprouts Classic versus Oklahoma, LSU, and UCLA, but she just couldn't. She just fell on her landing. But those are freshman mistakes, and people are already hitting the panic button with this Utah team without Emily saying that they're not going to make it to nationals, they're not going to qualify for nationals. None of this is going to happen. Utah's just going to suck for the rest of the year. Yeah, it is a big hit for Utah, but at the same time, getting some of these freshmen this experience so early on in their careers is going to pay dividends for Utah down the line. Utah's going to have to replace an upwards of 14 routines for next season with the departing fifth years and the departing seniors. And so getting these girls this experience now is just, it's going to help. It's going to pay dividends down the line. I'm interested to see, because this team has had 11 days off now. They have not competed since MLK Day Monday night. And Friday will be their first competition in 11 days. Getting them it's a home meet, get them back in front of the Huntsman crowd. Let's see what they can do. I expect a pretty big showing from Utah. The thing is with gymnastics is you don't want to peak too early. That was always something that has been mentioned through this program for years, going back to Greg Marsden's days. You do not want to peak too early. And so people are seeing Oklahoma scoring a national high in week 4 of a 198.325. You don't want to be scoring that right now, because by the time that postseason comes around, you might not make it. And when it comes down to postseason, if you have one failed mistake on podium at nationals, you're done. Your 198 score that you scored in week 3 ain't going to matter. It matters that you get what you need to get to nationals. But at the same time, like, you need to, like, making sure that you are hitting your stuff towards the end of the season is what truly matters. So, like, for Utah to be, like, missing some landings on stuff, like, yeah, you wish you see that now. But at the same time, like, if Utah's not sticking landings right now, like, yeah, get upset. But to a certain extent, like, if they're not sticking those landings by mid-March, then yeah, really start panicking, because that's when you need to start, like, hitting your incline, is at that time. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's just like any, like, unlike like sports like football or basketball with win-loss ratios, like, what matters truly here is your scores. And like, it doesn't matter if you score that 198 now or if you score that 198 the last meet of the regular season. As long as you get there, that's the point.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's what matters. That's what matters most. And honestly, covering Utah in some ways is even more than a marathon. It can be like an Ironman, because there is so much stuff going on. It's hard to keep track of and follow, Sammy. And if people want to try to keep everything focused going on at Utah, where should they head over to?
Head over to UteZone.com. Obviously, with a subscription-based platform, we do offer like discounts for your first couple of months. Come on over. We do a lot of recruiting recruiting information and analysis. I cover football, women's basketball, and gymnastics. And then our head of command is Steve Bartle. He covers men's basketball, football, and a little bit of everything else. So it's a great community. If you come over to UteZone, there's a lot of insider information that you probably won't get anywhere else. So come on over to UteZone. We'll show you what it's like to have some good Utah content.
Sammy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes, but we look forward to be back with you tomorrow talking all things Utah football. We'll see you then.